Hello and welcome to another episode of a Wicked Parley. I'm your host, Justin, and the fellow co-host, Rose.
Hello and good evening, everybody.
Yes, tonight we're going to have a special show, call-in show, where we get to discuss whatever the heck you guys want to discuss. And, hopefully we'll have people who call in. And if not, then, of course, we'll just kind of go through some questions and things like that we kind of want to discuss. And say, you guys, can't believe you guys want to come talk to us, Oh my God.
How dare. We just wanted to chat and have a discussion.
I know, right? Wicked Parley. Come on now. Let's go have chat. All right. So while we wait for people to want to interact with us and say hello.
Yes.
We had a couple of prepared questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of...
Just in case.
Just in case. And I kind of wanted to maybe go through a couple of those and kind of get some thoughts on it.
Okay.
One of the first questions I kind of wanted to ask kind of came from insight from me kind of watching another channel, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Find some inspiration.
Yeah, there's this channel that I like to watch called Cinema Therapy. One of my friends kind of turned me to the show to kind of see how some other channels do some of their stuff. And I was like, huh, that's pretty cool. And just to preface this for people who've never seen that show before, it's two guys sitting on a couch. One person's really into making movies. The other person's a therapist. And they basically critique movies using the lens of therapy and cinematography.
Well, all right.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting kind of little balance. And so it's kind of cool to see how some of these things can be kind of portrayed. And they have a super extensive team of people edit and modify their show, so it looks really good. Yeah. But one of the things that the therapist kind of had said on the show was something that really caught my attention and made me think, hey, how often do people actually do this? And the thing that the therapist had said was he had questioned how many people have stopped to ask their partner what their dreams are. And what he was referring to specifically was their aspirations, their goals in life. Because, a lot of times in relationships, one person kind of takes the lead and then the other person kind of is subservient to that in some ways. And their goals get kind of put to the side. And they're not really fully involved in decision-making processes. They're kind of the sidekick, And I think that healthy relationships should have a discussion about what both people equally want and what their dreams and goals are. And they should both be striving together towards those goals rather than one person falling short. And so, I was thinking about this question. I was like, wow, you know what? I don't think I have ever heard anybody ever discuss this. I thought it was oh, hey, this is kind of an important thing. And so it just made me think about it quite a bit. And I'm curious, Rose, have you ever thought about that before? Have you ever considered maybe your parents' relationships and ever seen them maybe discuss things in the past?
Definitely not in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually it was always kind of in the background and I just kind of saw the results of it.
Mm-hmm.
With my dad asking that we move so it would be easier for him to commute to his job because it was an hour and 10 minutes commute each way, which not the best thing.
Yeah.
Never fun. I am dealing with a 40 minute to an hour commute depending on traffic. Not fun.
Mm-mm.
And then when my mom had opened up her business, he was doing everything he could to help. So they kind of split the chores, kind of did what they could to help the other out in their respective work, if available. Because my mom was not the best tech-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But he was. So he'd cover her on that.
Mm-hmm.
And she would do everything in her power to make things around the house easier on him. Mm-hmm. So it's just if they talked about it, it was definitely not in my earshot, or at least not in a language I could understand.
Okay. I mean, like, that's okay. Have you ever seen, like, any of your, like, friends, like, parents ever do that before in front of anybody? Like, or do you feel like that, like, no matter how you slice it, this is, like, an intimate conversation that's not really shared with other people?
I feel like, to me, this seems a bit more intimate because you're sharing what your innermost dreams and aspirations are, what you want to do, kind of more than anything in the world type of scenario. And it's one thing to share that with like friends, if they react badly or poorly, you can kind of joke about it. But like you do that with your partner, and if they, laugh it off or joke about it, like, you think it's dumb, it's like, you might have chosen the wrong partner, not gonna lie. And it also depends, like, what reason do they have for critiquing it? Is it a worry for you as the person that has that dream? Or is it a worry for them who might be involved with it? So, I don't know.
Interesting. I mean,
at least that's, like, my point of view.
I mean, that's a fair point of view to have.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
What about you? Do you think it's more private in conversation, or, like, could be public if need be?
I think in the premise of it, it sounds intimate to me. I'm not so sure that it necessarily is private, like, 100% of the time. Because I could imagine, like, it being kind of like a family, maybe like a family dinner kind of situation where you guys kind of gather around and you kind of discuss kind of like things, and maybe something like this might come up. And so, while maybe it isn't like something that you'd share with like your neighbors, but the family might be a part of that. In some way. At least...
nosy neighbor, get out.
I know, right? You're the nosy neighbor peeking over. Hey, what's going on?
Don't get me started on... I have a story, apparently, from one of my classmates. It's terrifying. Kind of. I don't know. Not really terrifying, but kind of, like, creepy. A bit, maybe. But continue.
Okay, well, maybe another time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When it comes to that. But, yeah, when it comes down to this, I think, personally... when I've been in relationships, I honestly don't think I ever did stop to ask what my partner's actual dreams were. And past like the getting to know each other kind of phase. Because, in a lot of relationships, you kind of like there's the phone calls and like the dates and stuff like that, right? Yeah. And so like you get to kind of know each other, figure out what your strengths are, figure out what your weaknesses are. And then, yeah.
So did like the asking of that question of what your dreams are just kind of stop after that phase or something?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, it basically, you hear what they want to do, and you, of course, if you care about them, right? Like, in my instance, I cared about the people I was with, so, of course, I was trying to, keep that in mind to some extent, but, after some time has passed, it stops being on the forefront of your mind, and so, at least for me, it kind of fell off to the background.
Kind of like it's just part of the norm now, and it probably wouldn't change too much.
Kind of, in that way, sort of. And it's not like I would be opposed, like to having a discussion. It just never came up. It was never brought up like in a way that was like, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. This is where I currently am at. I'm not feeling like I'm getting the support I need here. Let's get the support here, kind of thing. It never came up that way. It was always like
a lack of communication type of thing.
Yeah, you could say that. I think that like in my experience, it's been usually the relationship was not long enough for it to get to the point of being able to assess this a second time. And in the instance of the one that was, it was like a yelly, angry sort of conversation, if you want to call it that. And
if it's yelly, I wouldn't call it a conversation. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean,
no offense, but I wouldn't call that a conversation. Yeah, I'd call that an argument.
Yeah, I mean, it could be definitely viewed that way. I'm trying to paint this in a nice light, not in like this person was a total bitch. It's like.
I mean, you don't need to be a total bitch to just have an argument.
I know, but like this is just, anyways. The point of the matter is that like. Even though the situation played out in the way where that could have happened, it still wasn't. and I think the reason why this particular question struck me so hard was the fact that it was something that I'm like, that's something that I would want to be considerate of, and something that I think is a good value. And I was kind of shocked at the fact that like it hadn't come to me second nature. It was like a very profound thing. I felt like it was a very profound statement that was very important. And I was just like, I had totally not considered this. I was like, okay, well, like humbled and surprised and happy to learn and integrate something that is so important into my life.
Yeah.
And,
All right.
and this is the reason why I wanted to bring it up to the show, because all of you guys who watch the show and support the show, I wanted you guys all to, maybe if you hadn't come across this, to be exposed to it. And maybe if this is helpful, then it's a way you could integrate it into your life as well.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
So, do we have anybody at all?
I don't see anybody.
You don't see anybody? Okay.
No.
Not shocked.
I have an eye out.
Okay, you got an eye out? All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, people in the future, who may be watching this recording. Next time we have a live show, pop in. We would like to hear from you. We'd like to have a conversation. We'd like to know your thoughts on that question I just asked.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know for
turkey over here.
Cold turkey. So I actually have another question for you.
Shoot.
Why do you think we like what we like?
Lizard brain.
Well, I mean more specifically. Why do we have favorites? Why do we have favorite colors? Why do we have favorite foods? Why do we have preferred clothing? Why are the people we hang out with the people we hang out with? Why do we like what we like?
Okay, so you want a serious answer, not the funny answer of lizard brain, right?
I mean, I will. Well, I think we know lizard brain's part of it. But what's the fun answer? Outside of the lizard brain, if there's one.
The fun answer was the lizard brain because it's just funny and short.
Okay.
If I had to go more serious, I think it'd have to deal with our past experiences, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, the reasons I have my favorites is because they remind me of good times in my past. So, all the fond memories that are brought up. For instance, my favorite color is blue and silver.
Mm-hmm.
Silver because it's kind of shiny, it's nice and metallic, but it also is just, to me, it's kind of a almost royalty color.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes, people look elegant. It makes them...
It's got a regal element to it.
Yeah, it looks nice and regal. Like, purple can kind of do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, for me, it's silver. And those fond memories are of my family whenever they happen to be wearing silver clothing. It just makes them look nicer, primer, proper, more, up there.
Yeah.
And as for the blue, it reminded me of, clearest sunny skies where I would be able to hang out with friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
The ocean, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of leads into a bunch of other favorites, which have connotations for essentially everything I have a favorite of, because everything kind of connects to those fond memories in the past. But that's the reason, that is what I believe that I like what I like. I don't know how it is for other people.
Mm.
So, what do you think? Why do you like what you like, huh?
Okay. Well, I would definitely say that that's actually not... My lizard brain would not be the thing of the reasons why I like what I like. All the time. Okay, obviously there are going to be physical characteristics of certain people that definitely are going to be appealing to me, and that definitely is lizard brain territory, right?
Sorry.
But what I would say is the real reason why things are my favorite, I think, is because they're familiar and they're comfortable. I would say that they're, in a lot of ways, they're built off of association. So in some ways it's similar to you in the fact that you connect certain things with certain memories, and so you're fond of them. I would say I would connect things to the past that I knew I had a good experience with, and so I'll often try to repeat that similar good experience that I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
for,
Yeah.
based upon that kind of thinking. So I will go to my favorite places because in the past I liked those places. This is the reason why, like, when I say I loved going to Hawaii, that I want to go back to Hawaii. It's because I want to re-experience that wonderful experience that I already had, and I want to like do that again.
Aloha.
Uh, well, I would say like when it came to Hawaii, it was more like a atmosphere kind of thing. Like the people
Yeah.
there were just super chill, super nice.
Mm-hmm.
Shout
Oh,
out to
yeah,
anyone
I've
from
heard of it.
Hawaii. You guys are all awesome.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Um, and then I think like when it comes to like other things, like
Yeah.
more like clothing and more like anything that's more on the aesthetic side.
Yeah.
I think that the reasons why I have my favorites are probably linked directly to specific interactions that I had with certain people and certain circumstances
Yeah.
at points early in my history. You know, early in childhood, I think, is where a lot of my favorites come from. Like
Fair.
my favorite color is green. Um,
Ah.
my favorite color is green, not because of money, which is a lot of people.
I
Uh,
was honestly thinking grass, but all right.
okay, yeah. Well, my favorite reason why green stands out to me as my favorite color is kind of like two or three fold. The first is that like I as a kid was enamored with dinosaurs. The most common dinosaurs colors were green. So I loved dinosaurs so much that when I was a kid, I had a dinosaur costume that I would wear to preschool. Apparently,
Oh,
like I love my dinosaur costume because I thought I was a dinosaur.
I love the new ones, the inflatable dinosaur costumes. They're just funny to walk around in.
They are funny to observe. I don't know about walk. I've never walked around one, but they are funny. The other reason why I like green is because I was a big fan of the Power Rangers, and I love the Green Ranger, and so there was
Also, fair.
there's part of it, you know. And I think then later, as it kind of like I got through like other parts of life, I always still found green very comforting, and it
Yeah.
signified to me a healthy life. And so I
Alright.
think so like you know it's like a building up of various things, at least for in the case of like say like
Yeah.
color green, that attributed to why it's my favorite and why I like it. I
Oh,
think
now I'm curious.
oh, I was also say is that I think food is kind of the same way as the color.
Food. Nums. But I am also now curious as to people either watching now or in the future, like what are your favorites and what memories you're kind of linked to that or why?
Yeah, let's hear
Color's a
about
safe
me.
bet, right?
Yeah, I think color's a safe bet. Tell us your
Color's
favorite
safe.
color and why.
Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
I know, right? Okay.
You've got 5 seconds. Go. No.
Yeah, there's a couple other questions I was going to ask, but did you have any
Yeah.
questions that you wanted to perhaps ask?
Mm, nothing off the top of my head. This week's kind of been insane for me, not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. Ah, here's one. Okay, so this one's a would you rather.
Okay.
Alright, so this is twofold and the options are kind of long, so bear with me here.
Okay.
Okay, would you rather have friends who are rich and basically pay for everything you have and want? No real, restrictions as to how they act.
Okay.
And then the second option is, would you rather have friends who are poor but treated you with utmost respect and reverence? Which I guess kind of implies the first group. As not doing it.
So that would be kind of like saying that the first group is basically rich and pays for everything, but treats you like trash.
Probably more than likely, yes.
And then the other group is kind of like poor, but treats you with like respect and like compassion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cut and dry. I think the second group is the one I'd go with. I mean, money can buy you lots of things. It can create circumstance and situations by which you might be happy. However, I think I think self-respect for me is a higher level priority than really much of anything else.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and so I couldn't tolerate somebody who basically paid for everything for me and then also treated me like trash. I mean, if you pay for everything for me and then you still treat me with respect, I would be kind of like a little more okay. I'd still be a little off-put a little bit, but for the most part, Yeah, for the most part, I would definitely be like, hey, okay. But yeah, I mean, like, so clearly you have a similar frame of reference for your comment.
Yeah, pretty much, because it's like, I have friends who like to spoil me.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I don't spoil myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fair, whatever. But it's just like, they at least treat me with respect and stuff, and we often talk about, who's actually going to cover it next time, so, I'm not trying to take advantage of them.
Is it like a polite fight?
Yeah, polite fight, which sometimes gets violent, not gonna lie.
Oh my god, in what way?
I need one in the stomach.
Oh my lord. Okay.
We already made arrangements, and he was trying to backtrack on me. I was not gonna let that slide.
Oh my lord.
So yes, the polite fights can get violent. It's happened twice. 3 times, actually. Never mind.
Dear lord.
But, if I had a group of friends who were rich and basically paid for everything but treated me with no respect, I'd feel more like a pet than a person.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm the type of person who wants a sugar daddy or a sugar mama, not gonna lie. I don't need that. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
The whole poor but at least treating me with respect and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We can work on the poor, but if you start with no disrespect, it's kind of hard to get respect.
My god, like, I swear to god, like, okay, so like I've seen a question like this before, right?
Yeah.
And like the thing that like it stands out to me the most when it comes to this is the fact that like you look at poor as something that you can change. Like, as if you have the personal authority and or like ability to be like, don't worry about it, we're gonna fix that for you, just give me a little bit. You know, instead of being like, hey, you know what, it's just a fact of life, you're like, I got this.
It's like, if it wasn't that much of a
Got
problem,
you,
we can
fam.
work on
Just
it.
like,
I mean, I think the both of us have some connections to make it work.
yeah, that's fair, but like still though, like,
It's just like, it's if it's really becoming a problem, it's something that can be worked on, but it's not like end all be all type of thing.
that's fair. That's fair.
Because it is something you can work on. A person's attitude takes a lot longer.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's some people who are some broke ass people out there. You gotta learn some skills, you know.
For that's the thing, though. It's just like, what?
What
why
takes
are they
longer?
poor?
No, it's what takes longer? Learning skills that are tradable in some way and can actually go to work, or skills to learn how to fix your psyche. I think that's gonna be a moving target right there. I think that's a sliding scale. I don't think it's cut and dry.
I'd like to just shoot it with a knife, but alright.
I mean, shoot it with a knife? No, a gun is too simple. I gotta shoot a knife at him. What? That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Oh.
But yeah, I can see, like, depending on how bad the problem is, you know.
Mm-hmm. In fact, anybody who's watching this in the future, go ahead and throw in the comment section or email the show a list of your responses. Because I recognize that there might be a character limit in the comments, and maybe you guys have a more detailed answer. So feel free to email the show.
I kind of like this would you rather question, because if you don't let them think about it, if you literally like give them, hey, you have 5 seconds to answer this question, go. It kind of lets you know what the kind of end goals are, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they a long-term thinker or a short-term thinker? Or, like, what do they covet between the two? At least that's my opinion to this question.
Interesting.
Because, if you give people a time limit, and a very short one at that, they'll just spout whatever comes up first.
Yeah, I mean, that seems fair. I mean, I think a lot of people, whenever they're presented with a question, feel on the spot. And so I think that their knee-jerk reaction is probably to do the very thing you just described, which is just what's the first thing that comes to their mind. And maybe the first thing that comes to their mind is true. Or maybe it's
Maybe.
not.
Who knows? It could be either it's true and that's what they covet, or society says answer this or you're dead.
Well, it looks like we're not getting too many viewers for tonight, so I'm going to ask one last question for you,
All right.
and we'll both comment to it. And if anyone in the chat wants to, comment on it, great. But here goes.
Okay.
What is an acceptable and reasonable level of modifying one's lifestyle to accommodate being environmentally friendly? Meaning, if you were, to, let's say, hypothetically, be like, I love the earth, and I want to recycle, and you have a recycle, is that fine with you? Or, let's say, this particular company pollutes the earth, and so I refuse to ever use any products from this company, and it comes at the cost of being able to buy things like toilet paper and like hand sanitizer and like all sorts of things. So what is a reasonable level to accommodate being environmentally friendly?
Let me think. Because the first thing that pops into mind is you shouldn't have to sacrifice your, the base of your mental well-being or your physical well-being, because you're not gonna do any good if you're dead in the ground.
Okay.
And as for mental, I'd rather not watch a person go insane trying to help the environment and then end up causing more damage by sheer accident.
Okay. Interesting.
So I think it's a balance of how much are you kind of willing to give up in order to, it may be more difficult, but you can still have, a similar lifestyle type of thing.
Okay. Well.
What about you?
Oh,
I see comments.
Yes, I see.
Hello.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, Host. I'm gonna be 1,000%. Like, I think that the idea of being environmentally friendly as an individual is a little bit silly. And I'm not saying that, like, being environmentally conscious is a bad thing, but I would say, like, the individual impact of one person isn't going to outweigh the, nearly 9 billion other people.
That's a hard thing, yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna be like, cool, if I want bottled water because the tap water in my place sucks, I'm getting bottled water. And you can cry me a river for getting that bottled water, but, like, at the end of the day, me getting bottled water isn't going to be that much more. And then another thing is, like, I'm a big believer in, like, I like sausage with my breakfast burritos. All right? I like it. All right? I like chicken. I like eggs. I'm not going to stop consuming these things because they're environmentally not great. All right? Some people buy, like, say, like Teslas, for instance, right? And they think, ooh, they're so environmentally friendly. But yet, those car batteries last 10 years. What are you going to do with the discarded battery? It's not like they can exactly recycle the thing. So,
Are you paying attention to the comments or something?
No. No, I was not paying attention to it, but hi there, Kyle. That's a great great comment.
Yeah,
we see eye to eye there,
There has been a plethora of comments as we were going on our rant, not gonna lie.
Oh, that's funny. That is hilarious. That is really, really funny. Yeah, I actually really wasn't looking at that. No. Hey, host Kyle, if you want to hop on the Discord and have a little chat about this, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, we can. We good with just pulling the two of them in at once, or we want to go one at a time?
We can pull them both in. I don't mind.
Okay.
What they want.
Well, if they want to join the chat, join the Discord, join the lounge. Let's go.
Yeah. To me, I think, like, host's comment about the whole plastic population of the ocean, that's real. That is 1,000%
the
real.
whole coming from fishing ships.
Yeah, like most of the
chips.
Yeah, most of the pollution that happens on the Earth actually happens directly towards fishing in the oceans. Most of that stuff actually comes from that. So,
okay.
if you want to eliminate,
I've watched way too many videos about people removing like fishing wire and nets from the necks of seals
Oh
and
yeah,
sea
yeah,
lions
yeah,
too. Yikes!
yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot out there. So like to
There's a
me,
lot.
yeah, to me, I don't really find being environmentally friendly necessarily does a whole hell of a lot on the micro scale.
Yeah, it'd have to be on a commercial scale.
To impact the macro,
Oh goodness.
you realistically need to be able to change policy and change, I would say, like the entire way in which our culture lives. You have to shape absolutely every element of culture to be in service of that particular goal, and even then, that's one culture. And so, like, in that way, you can say, yes, you can make significant strides, but it won't solve the issue. And I think that's the reason why climate change and really all the things that have associated with the environment, why we haven't really seen significant strides in anything, is because of that. Because there's only so much an individual or even a country can do about it, you know?
Hmm.
And it's a huge problem because let's take China and India for instance, right?
Alright.
There are these massive population centers where oh man,
What?
there's these
Not...
there's these massive population centers where they're trying to become a thriving economy and trying to have a middle class of people who can kind of afford to pay for a certain level of life. And because of that, I think strongly that until we find a way to make every single person on a close to equal scale, we're never going to be able to tackle the problems of the environment. And so, me recycling or not recycling, me going to one store and buying specific goods that are considered not good for the environment, me getting things that are maybe not carbon neutral. It's not that it doesn't have an impact; it just doesn't have a significant impact to outweigh the cost imbalance that not getting those goods would create.
I believe I see Kyle in the chat, in the lounge.
Cool, pull him in.
Yeah, so let me warn them ahead of time just in case. Alright, into the chat now.
Host, I don't even know what you're talking about when it comes to the rain video, having subliminal messages.
No.
You know what it is?
Right.
It's saying,
hello.
Take a leak, go pee.
Go pee. Hello.
Hey, Kyle, what's going on?
Hey, things are going well on my end. How about your guys'?
Going good. Going good. We've been
a little bit of a slow start
while waiting.
A little bit of a slow start today.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, what are your comments about this particular question?
Yeah. So, like a lot of how you kind of phrased it seemed to be minimal versus maximal utilitarianism. I posted that in the comments.
Yes, you're correct in that.
So, for those in the future, a minimal utilitarianism is the idea that you need to do things that maximize happiness and minimize suffering. And minimalist means do the bare minimum versus maxima means do the absolute maximum. So, like a small thing that you could do, let's say, is one day out of your life, change from eating beef to chicken. That's the minimum that you could do. That would help the environment. Maximalists would say give up meat altogether and take the money that you would have spent on meat and donate that to a charity that helps children, let's say. And I actually don't agree with either of them. I would actually I think that the framing of the question is bad because we could think of a different type of utilitarianism called world utilitarianism. You think of the best possible world and the worst possible world, and our world is somewhere in between the best and worst, and you just want to try and act so that you're moving closer and closer to the better world. So an example,
Mhm.
like some days eating meat would be better or worse than not eating meat. So just like feel it out in the moment. Um, your comment about how collective, like individual action doesn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I would agree. So that's why I also include sometimes calling your congressperson when a vote is coming up is the best thing that you could do. Uh,
Hmm.
like
Well,
So you
call,
can get in
uh,
contact.
yeah,
like,
or
Kyle, let
send
me
an email.
interject here for a second, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Okay, so like I hear what you're saying, and I'm familiar with these all three of those points actually. Um, and in some ways, I can understand your reasoning for disliking both minimalist and maximists when it comes to utilitarian perspectives. On the grounds that they're wrong. I mean, like flat out, like they're not really possible. They're kind of idealistic in nature, and working towards a better future is something that I think kind of is like a thing that I think a lot of people should hope to do. You know, if they care about the future, like they should be trying to make the world a better place.
Hmm.
But my thoughts on this is what would you tell a farmer who their entire income comes from the production of crops or more like produce that, or either it could be crops that are environmentally unfriendly, like let's say corn, or it could be any sort of like
Alfalfa in the West.
huh.
Alfalfa in
Yes, yeah,
California.
exactly. Yeah,
Water.
yeah, that's an excellent one. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, where we need water, and this is like taking or grapes are another one as an excellent example. What would you tell like a farmer that was producing something like that, when it comes to like it being in line with making the world a better place?
There was recently an NPR show about this,
Oh,
where they talked
Oh,
exactly about that.
oh,
And so I would say that it's really unfair that your water rights are tied to you maximizing the use of your water and not to grow alfalfa so
mm-hmm.
that you can get all of the water that you feel you're promised.
Yeah.
And that, like we should, like, it's really unfair to penalize you for things that are out of your control. So we shouldn't. We should find a way to make sure that you can still, uh, like, get a good income, that you
Mm-hmm.
can still grow crops, but that it's instead of growing alfalfa, we can look at crops that are less water intensive
Mm-hmm.
and let your cows eat grass, which is what they're supposed to eat. Like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we feed our cows alfalfa is like I don't really understand. The whole point of a cow is that it turns grass into beef. Um,
somebody's trying to get a little more
Well,
expensive.
I think that when it comes down to it, and I could be a little bit wrong about this, but like, because I'm not 100% like I don't know everything when it comes to everything, you know. But from what I have gleaned from things that I've seen when it comes to that, the reason why grains, alfalfa, things like filler, like in the diets of cows, has to do with the way in which the proteins distribute across the cow. So that way, when you actually butcher it, you have an even percentage of meat that's usable.
yeah.
And
So,
so,
yeah.
Hmm?
So, um, like I would say that this is a systems thing as well.
mhm,
There, like if it's possible to do studies and see. I know that a part of it is also that, um, like they grow tons of alfalfa and export it even, so
mhm,
that way they can maintain water rights. So maybe instead of growing alfalfa in the West,
mhm.
we could have them grow less water intensive crops, grow alfalfa in eastern parts of the United States that get more water and that have people who are like people who are desperate to grow crops and who like farmers out on the east.
Mhm.
They I think that back when the soybean products were uh, had a tariff on them, like
Mhm.
in Michigan, they were going out like they had to take out emergency loans.
I remember correctly about alfalfa, just as an example, because it's one of those ones that's really like commonly done. Is that it's extremely sensitive to being kind of flash frozen, and
Yeah,
so like if you were to go to the areas where there's large quantities of rainfall, During certain portions of the growing season, it would wipe out whole crops if a weather anomaly creeped up and froze everything. And that actually is something that happened in California when it comes to the apples this season. And so if you ever so those people who go to Apple Hill in Northern California, most of the orchards don't have apples this season because they were all destroyed in I think it was March.
Yeah,
Well,
climate change is also a part of it. So
Yeah.
you already see that because of, for example, oil companies that knew that climate change was a thing back in the 1960s, and they tried to withhold that information to make a better world for themselves. We now have a worse world for everybody else. So,
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
I'm not going to say to a farmer that they need to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. What I will say, though, is that we need to find ways to help farmers not feel the financial sting of things that aren't their fault. You don't know if you notice, listeners, I'm a socialist, so let's hear ways of that. And I don't think that either of you are, so feel free to disagree. But I think that there are plenty of ways that we can look at how to make sure that farmers are able to be more environmentally conscious while also not feeling financial sting. Look at speak to experts and see if they'd be able to say where alfalfa should be grown, rather than California. And then in California, we can grow crops that are more attuned to our climate.
I think that I agree with what you're saying to some extent, but I also kind of feel like it should also be up to the choice of the farmer what they choose to grow. I think that if you're, I'm not so here's one thing to know. I don't think any particular ideology is 100% correct. I like to borrow multiple concepts from multiple sides of different issues and different ideologies to combine to create my own. And so inherently, there are certain values of socialism that I think absolutely 100% have a place and should be used. Like fire department, for instance. It's just an obvious one, right? That a lot of people don't directly think about. So when you're saying distributing the resources more equitably is what it kind of sounds like. It to me doesn't sound like a bad idea necessarily. But what I would say is that, if you want, I think farmers should be able to grow whatever they want to grow, even if it was alfalfa, right? But if they decide to grow something that is in the area that would be helpful for everyone, then they get some sort of incentivization, a tax credit, something to make them more compliant with that. So that way, it's something that is a desired outcome rather than not so desirable. So, I think that that would be a way to get around it. And I do know that California is a weird place because of the way in which water is used. And because we're in a drought, and we've been in a drought for 7 years, and it's the worst drought that the state, the region has seen in 1,000 years. So it's a big problem, and there are no real easy answers to it. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate your opinion and your thoughts on that. And hey, if you have any more thoughts or opinions around it, mention it in a future episode or contact us on the email. I'd be happy to take a look and discuss some things further with you.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll be moving you into the lounge, but if you have somewhere to go. Okay.
All right.
See you back in the YouTube chat.
Later. Thank you for the call. Okay. And then when it comes down to any other future questions and stuff like that,
what's up?
There's one, I guess. Do you want to do any more questions, or do you want to just call it for tonight?
What are we in the mood for? It's already 9:44, so.
I can throw. Let's do one more question.
Just one?
Let's do one more question. Okay. So, the question that we kind of have prepared is kind of a deeper question, a question that requires kind of a little bit more thought. And so, if you guys have those kind of deep thoughts, then I would welcome the conversation. But the one that I want to kind of get into a little bit is what is your opinion of the use of pharmacological research and the overall use of the outcomes of that research being used in medicines for the treatment of psychiatric illnesses and overall diagnoses. And to put it in simpler terms, because that might be kind of like a little bit of a word vomit for some people.
I was like, what type of jargon was that?
Yeah, I know. How do you guys feel about people doing research, figuring out medical drugs that use, that have some sort of use that aids in perhaps a mental impairment of some kind, and then people basically being guinea pigs for those drugs? A great example of this that I can kind of describe to you is the uses of SSRIs that treat a whole bunch of different potential symptoms, but one of the bigger ones is kind of like depression. And the fact that some people will get an SSRI dosage, right, and they'll start off super high, and then they basically will have these levels lowered over time to try and match some level of equilibrium with their natural neurochemistry, and they'll somehow have like a leveled kind of experience where they no longer feel depression, but they also don't have any wild mood swings. And I think the issues associated with such drugs is the fact that they're so experimental. Even the ones that they say are super safe, they're not very many of them are very well known to have positive outcomes for all people. They're known to have a certain type of influence on people, and that the levels of that influence are going to be vary based upon age, like blood pressure, and a whole list of different biological factors. And so, like, I personally do not like the use of medication to service the wider public on average. I do think that there are extreme cases where people, who have major impairments do gain benefits from psychiatric drugs. But I think that those are the extreme outliers. And I think there are far too many people today who are given prescription medications for things like depression that probably there were other ways that wouldn't be required to use of medication per se. Like, for instance, maybe going outside, maybe getting some exercise, maybe being encouraged to join like team sports or something like that. That maybe would be healthier ways of alleviating some of the depression and other symptoms that are associated with it. So, sorry, that was kind of like a mouthful, but yeah, and also host, hilarious.
Goodness.
Oh my God, lobotomies are a terrible, horrible thing that I am. Oh God, yeah. What's your thoughts on that first, Rose?
For me, it's just kind of, if you're willing to prescribe these experimental drugs, medicine, whatever, the people you're prescribing them to should at least know everything that could probably freaking happen because of them. Or, like, have the option to just, if they feel that the medicine's not worth it, just don't god dang take it and look for alternatives rather than, being essentially commanded to take it without any alternative. And for those who are, prescribing it, I would honestly like it that if they end up screwing this person over beyond belief and making like everything not even 10 times worse, just worse in general, and like not even like temporary worse, kind of, oh, you have a stomach ache, but once it passes it's all fine, but like actually having long-term effects that are worse, they should at least have some compensation for that poor person they just screwed the life of. Like, that's what I'd like to do, but because, there are some times where people will try those alternatives and they, for whatever, I don't know, reason, they don't work, so they actually have to take the medicine. But, they should have the ability to just use alternatives first and foremost, especially for those who are very adverse to medication. I've got a handful of friends who will just try to avoid touching medication for the life of them.
I feel like some I guess I would say like pharmacy and other like we'll say research groups or like no to any sort of like changes to the status quo.
This is like, I get it. It gets you money, but like, darn it, you're screwing up many, many, many people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who probably are under the impression that they need medication that probably don't. But there's also some people who are under medication that actually do need them, and it is helpful. But I think how they got there probably is not necessarily super helpful. The fact that like there are people who are literally taught like this is a safe dosage and this is a killing dose and that we want somewhere in between to try and help you with your symptoms is like that's flirting with a very dangerous line, you know.
That is death with no benefits.
and think about this, and at least in the case of somebody who is depressed, who has depression, right? You are giving them a loaded gun.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it in that way,
far,
yeah. How many people have overdosed?
It's quite easy.
Like there's probably tons of stories of people who have overdosed, you know, who were feeling depressed, who basically depression got to them and they tried to overdose. And sometimes they were successful, sometimes they weren't. But how often has that happened, and how often has the people who basically were in charge and who could have done something to stop this, failed and no actions happened to them?
No consequence.
There's no consequence. Or if there are, it's like a slap on the wrist, or like their insurance company paid for the damages. Like they saw no direct consequence for their actions.
Again, I'd like to take that slap to the wrist and turn it into a shank to the knee.
Yeah. To answer some of the comments here, I'm going to try and get through a couple of these real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kyle's response to the overall net positive, but there are definite problems. Completely agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
Host, we should take a different path. Neural problems can be treated through other ways, and medicine is relied too heavily as a wonder fix. Yes, completely agree. In fact, there's prison populations that have had like certain evaluations that have done towards like brain chemistry to understand some of the things that happen and why maybe some criminals will commit crimes. And there are actually neurodivergent. There's evidence to suggest that neurodivergent things are very common in the prison population. And so like there could be multiple explanations for that. But I definitely think that like just to get in regards to that, I definitely think there are definitely medicine reliant ways of treating these people. Kyle says, I think we need more research and more my eyes
disaggregation.
Yes, therapy and lifestyle change are the best interventions, but some people and some brain differences need drugs. No stigma. I don't think there should be a stigma associated with it. I just think that it should be acknowledged as a lot of medications, not all, not saying all, but there are a lot of medications that are more experimental and require, I think, at least the awareness on the part of the patient to know that, hey, this is not super good. Like, we don't know 100% of these things, and these are some adverse effects that could happen. And I think that, like, while some people are told this, not enough. but yeah, definitely no stigma when it comes to these things. I don't think that's a way to help people. Host says, drugs and medicine is the short path, but has the most risk. But I support research. A better understanding of condition can lead to preferred treatment. Yes, within reason. I think it depends on the type of research, because there's a big difference between qualitative and quantitative research when it comes to the ways in which this stuff is portrayed. And so it can be very easily twisted for funding, and you can start to have a big pharma +1 problem.
Oh, yeah. Next comment.
Oh, and host, next comment is doctors also might prescribe a drug because they get a bonus for doing so. Big Pharma used to reward doctors for prescribing their drugs. You're absolutely correct about that. In fact, I read a book about a year ago. I even mentioned it on the show where that was exactly the case. There were clinicians, psychiatrists who were basically flown to a tropical paradise They had to sit in for a 3-day seminar, and the rest of the week was theirs to do whatever the heck they wanted. While they were in the seminar, they were basically being pushed to use experimental drugs in place of SSRIs on their clients. And they were given big bonuses and big extra incentives for
Yikes.
actually pushing those drugs onto their clients. So yes, it does happen. It is unfortunate and is something I hope to not see. That's pretty much the end of the show. I just want to say thank you guys for showing up at the end there. I do appreciate it. If you get an opportunity to watch the earlier parts of the episode, you might find it intriguing, and please feel free to mention the comment section or email the show. You can email the show at awickedparley@gmail.com, and hopefully you do. I'd like to hear you guys out a little bit more. Next week's episode is going to be another call-in show. Similar to this, there are some particular areas in which there's some questions I have for Rose and hopefully you guys, and hopefully
Oh no, I'm getting interrogated.
yeah. Hopefully we'll all be able to have a nice, fun conversation participating. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot the show the questions, and we will do our best to try and put them on there as they fit. If they don't fit, then maybe we'll save it for a future episode. All right. Well, with that all being said, I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your guys' evening or day, depending on when you watch this particular program, and we'll see you in the next one. Good night and goodbye, everybody.